So, welcome everyone to today's session. Today we are going to see about the orbit, its boundaries and its contents. So, as we all know, orbit is a pyramidal bony cavity situated on each side of the root of the nose. They provide socket for the movement of eyeballs and other contents over it. As we all know, it bears an apex and a base. The apex is situated over the posterior side and the base over the front side where we on the anterior side where we see the face. This orbit bears four walls and which acts as the boundaries of orbit, and now we are going to see about the boundaries of orbit. So the boundaries of orbit is usually depicted by this diagram where it bears four walls, this being the roof, this being the medial side, this being the floor, and this being the lateral side. So a single bone constitutes three walls of orbit, which is known as the sphenoid bone. This sphenoid bone acts as the wall of acts in three ways, in three walls of the orbit. That is, the greater wing of sphenoid forms the lateral wall, and the lesser wing of sphenoid forms the roof of the orbit, and the body of sphenoid forms the medial side of orbit. So, as we all know, on the lateral side, the major bone of the skull is zygomatic bone. Which constitutes the lateral wall of the orbit also. That is the frontal process of zygomatic bone. And over the roof, we all know the major bone of the skull over the roof is frontal bone. So the roof of the orbit is formed by the orbital plate of frontal bone. And coming to the medial side, it is formed by three other bones than the sphenoid bone. That is, here we have the sphenoid bone, the body of sphenoid bone. So sphenoid, and the upcoming bone will be ethmoid. Ethmoid bone. This is in deep we can name it as the orbital plate of ethmoid bone. The orbital plate of ethmoid bone, and next to it there will be the lacrimal bone, and next to it over the medial side there will be medial maxillary bone. So the frontal process of maxillary bone forms the medial wall of orbit. Coming to the floor, superiorly it is formed by the palatine bone, and to some extent the maxillary bone covers the floor of the orbit, which is known as the orbital surface of maxillary bone. And these remaining parts is covered or formed by the zygomatic bone, to be precise by the orbital surface of zygomatic bone. Orbital surface of zygomatic bone. So this will be the bone boundaries of orbit. So next we'll see about some of the relations and some of the important structures over these bony structures. So for that, again I'll draw the same boundaries. Yeah, so here we all know this will be sphenoid bone. Yeah, so this will be the greater wing of sphenoid, this will be the lesser wing of sphenoid, this will be the body of sphenoid, this will be the palatine bone, and this will be the zygomatic bone. For depiction, I'll name it as GWLW like that. So this will be the zygomatic bone, this will be the frontal bone. Here we have ethmoid bone, lacrimal bone, and maxillary bone. And over the base, on this side we have maxillary bone, and on this side we will have zygomatic bone. So relations and structures related to these bones are on the roof side we'll have lacrimal fossa over here. Lacrimal fossa. So the frontal bone consists of lacrimal fossa, which helps in the lodging of lacrimal apparatus. And on the other side we have trochlear fossa. This helps in the attachment of trochlear ligament, through which the superior oblique muscle gains its course. We'll discuss that about later. So on the medial side we have this ethmoid bone and two canals over the ethmoid bone known as anterior and posterior ethmoidal canal, and we have a lacrimal groove over here. This forms the nasolacrimal duct. There is a course of nasolacrimal duct will be over this lacrimal groove. And then over the floor we have the origin of inferior oblique muscle. Which is also an extraocular muscle, which will be discussed later. And so two important fissures placement will be on floor and on the lateral side. In between the junction of this lateral surface and the floor, we have a fissure known as the inferior orbital fissure. Inferior orbital fissure. And in the same way, in between the lateral side and the roof at the junction of both walls, we have superior orbital fissure. And another main content of the orbit is optic canal. This superior orbital fissure, inferior orbital fissure, and the optic canal have the most of the contents of orbit, which will be discussed later. So other than these, over the lateral side we have foramen of zygomatic nerve here. Foramen of zygomatic nerve, and we have zygomatic tubercle here. Zygomatic tubercle. Yeah, so that will be the relations of the bony structures of orbit. Now we'll see about the contents of orbit, which is present inside the superior orbital fissure, inferior orbital fissure, optic canal. But before that, let us see the anatomical structure of whatever we discussed earlier. So this will be the anatomical structure of orbit which we discussed sometimes before. So this will be the lateral side, this will be the medial side, this will be the roof as discussed, and this will be the floor. So on seeing these pictures, you would have come to a conclusion that whatever we read, on the basis of whatever we read. So on the lateral side, we have a zygomatic bone here, and this will be the zygomatic tubercle. This will be our foramen of zygomatic nerve. I'll write in capital so that you get related to the previous picture which we wrote the full name. And over the superior side, we have our lacrimal fossa here and the trochlear fossa here. So obviously this is the frontal bone. This is the frontal bone. And on the lateral side, medially to the zygomatic bone, we have the greater wing of sphenoid, and on the roof side, we have the lesser wing of sphenoid, and on the medial side, we have the body of the sphenoid. The body of the sphenoid. So this will be the ethmoid bone, this will be the lacrimal bone, and this will be the maxillary bone. So these two things over here is known as the anterior and posterior ethmoidal canal. Anterior and posterior ethmoidal canal. So over the base, we have the continuation of zygomatic bone here, and over here we have the continuation of maxillary bone. So what are these things in between? As we discussed, this will be our this will be our superior orbital fissure. This will be our inferior orbital fissure, and this will be our optic canal. So yeah, and this thing is the origin of inferior oblique muscle. Once the notes have been posted, you can just comparatively see the previous picture and this anatomical picture, so that you could get a clear view about the structures of orbit. Yeah, I forgot to say this. This is the lacrimal groove. There are two things, don't get confused. This is lacrimal groove and this is lacrimal fossa. Over the roof side, this is lacrimal fossa. Over the medial side, we have the lacrimal groove. So next, we'll move on to the contents of orbit. Contents of orbit. The contents of orbit are mainly based on three structures that we already saw. Those structures will be superior orbital fissure, inferior orbital fissure, and the optic canal. Yeah, the optic canal contains two structures, namely the optic nerve and the ophthalmic artery. So the optic canal contains the optic nerve and the ophthalmic artery. I'll show you the pictures later. So we'll discuss about superior orbital fissure first, because inferior orbital fissure just contains two things, that is two nerves Yeah, I'll just give a brief note about it. It contains two nerves, namely infraorbital nerve, inferior orbital nerve, which is a branch of maxillary nerve. And it also have another nerve, which is the zygomatic branch of maxillary nerve. So the two important nerves of the inferior orbital fissure are inferior orbital nerve, which is a branch of maxillary nerve, and the zygomatic branch of maxillary nerve. Both are the branches from maxillary nerve. So now we'll see about the superior orbital fissure. This is a very important thing of the anatomy of orbit. So of the superior orbital fissure, this ring is very important, which is known as the common tendinous ring. Right? Common tendinous ring. This ring bears the ligaments and other four muscular structures, which is the origin of four extraocular muscles. That is, this will be the superior rectus muscle. This will be the inferior rectus muscle. This will be the medial rectus muscle, and this stands to be the lateral rectus muscle. Yeah. So this common tendinous ring acts as the origin of four extraocular muscles. There are totally 7 extraocular muscles, 4 here, and this one is denoted as levator palpebrae superioris. And this to be the superior oblique muscle. The other muscle, which is known as the inferior oblique muscle, gains its origin from the floor of the orbit, which I denoted in the previous pic. That is, in this picture we denoted this as the origin of inferior oblique muscle. So there are 7 extraocular muscles, which will be discussed later. So, and this superior orbital fissure is further divided into 3 parts, which is known as superior and lateral. This part stands to be the superior lateral. This one will be the intermediate. And this part will be known as inferior medial part. On the superior lateral part, we have 5 important contents. 3 nerves. The nerves are not visible, so I will highlight it with an orange color. So there are 3 important nerves, for which you can keep it as LFT. LFT we know as liver function test, but here LFT stands for lacrimal nerve, frontal nerve, and the T denotes trochlear nerve. So 3 nerves as lacrimal nerve L, frontal nerve as F, and trochlear nerve as T. And we have an important artery over here, which is known as the recurrent meningeal branch of ophthalmic artery. of ophthalmic artery. And we have an important vein over here, which is known as the superior ophthalmic vein, which is known as superior ophthalmic vein. Bear with my handwriting, but I'll try to scan this pic and I'll post it as your notes soon. So on the inferior medial side or part, we have an important vein which is known as inferior ophthalmic vein. Superior ophthalmic vein over the superior part, and inferior ophthalmic vein over the inferior part. This intermediate part is very important part because it constitutes some fine nerves and an artery, including the optic canal, fine nerves and an artery. So I'll denote the nerves as orange color. Yeah, we have two oculomotor nerve, which is superior and inferior branch of oculomotor nerve, and then we have two other nerves which is known as, on the medial side we have nasociliary nerve, and on the lateral side and inferior side, nasociliary nerve on the medial side, and on the lateral side we have abducent nerve. So how to remember these nerves? You can keep a mnemonic as a noise. So a noise depicts for abducent nerve, N depicts nasociliary nerve, and O depicts oculomotor nerve. IS indicates the two branches of oculomotor nerve, inferior and superior branch of oculomotor nerve. So we have four nerves over the medial part, namely superior and inferior branch of oculomotor nerve, the nasociliary nerve, and then the abducent nerve. So coming to the optic canal, this is the optic canal, this blue color round structure. Inside the optic canal we have the major nerve known as the optic nerve, and an artery which is known as the ophthalmic artery. Yeah, so this will be the contents of superior orbital fissure, that is indirectly the contents of orbit. I'll try to scan this pic and soon I'll post it as your notes. So coming back to this, the superior orbital fissure contains three parts: superior lateral, intermediate and inferior medial. Superior lateral have one artery, three nerves and one vein. Intermediate part contains five nerves, including the optic canal nerve, and one artery. The inferior medial part have one important vein. Yeah, so this will be the contents of orbit: superior orbital fissure, inferior orbital fissure, optic canal, gives these many. So the next video will be about extraocular muscles and its functions. See you all in the next video. Thank you. Post your doubts in the comment section. We'll try to reply at that post earliest. Thank you.